production of goods and services. The basic thing that human communities do to keep themselves alive, to produce the goods and services by labor without which we can't live. Food, clothing, shelter, etc. Capital, which always existed in lending and in merchanting, that always existed wherever markets arose, just about. The new thing, that which happens in Europe in the 17th and 18th century and spreads to the world, is the capture by capital of production. The spread of capital into production. The takeover of production. So that production becomes, here we go now, subordinated to making money out of money. That's new, says Marx. That's what's different. That's the new thing about capitalism that we need to investigate, having arrived at it through a discussion of commodities and markets, which is where everybody thought economics was. He's now moving us into production. He's giving the focus, moved it from the realm of exchange to the realm of production. Because he has said in a way that the rules of exchange, this kind, capital, self-expanding value, has taken over production. So he asks himself, and he answers his own question, how does this work? And that's what we're going to end today. It works as follows. And by the way, if you want the particular analysis we're about to go through, it's in the opening chapters of volume 2 of Capital. The area called the metamorphoses of capital, or the circuits of capital. That's where what I'm about to do is actually contained. We're jumping ahead a little bit, but it's the logic I would see as a little bit different from Marx's. But remember, Marx didn't write volumes 2 and 3, and so I could argue that he would have done it this way. Anyway, let's follow what Marx means. The capitalist, not the money lender, who in volume 3 is called the money-lending capitalist. Notice Marx's language, the money-lending capitalist. And it's not the merchant who is called in Marx the merchant capitalist. No, we're now going to turn to what Marx calls the industrial capitalist. Please note in the back of your mind, in volumes 2 and 3, a systematic distinction is made. Whole chapters, whole parts of the book, encompassing multiple chapters, are devoted to money-lending capitalists, merchant capitalists, and industrial capitalists. Therefore, the next time you read an article or a book by somebody purporting to represent Marxist theory, who uses the word capitalist without a qualifying adjective, you got another idiot. Go take a course in underwater basket weaving. This person is really making big mistakes. So what is an industrial capitalist? This new thing that Marx says is what we have to understand. And you know where he's going. He's going to the surplus store. An industrial capitalist begins with money. That's what he does. Just like a merchant or a money lender. But unlike a merchant or a money lender, he doesn't lend the money. And unlike a merchant, he doesn't buy stuff in order to resell it. Our industrial capitalist buys two kinds of things. Means of production. That's a general term to incorporate tools, equipment, raw materials. He buys tools, equipment, raw materials, factory space, office space, whatever he needs. And he also hires LP, labor power. So he uses his money to buy means of production and labor power. Buys tools, equipment, and raw materials, and hires workers. He then combines these two together in P, the act of production. He says to the workers he's hired, stand there, do this with this machine on these raw materials in this way. After a period of production, there is an output, C, commodity, something, whatever they produce in this factory. Ladders, widgets, combs, eyeglasses, whatever. And then the capitalist sells these outputs for money. And the whole point of it is that whatever the money was he had at the beginning, he will have more at the end. That's what modern capitalism is. It's when industry, when production is under the same rule and force that used to govern just lending and merchants. That the game, the point, is to produce. A feudal lord didn't do this. Didn't begin with money, didn't end up with more money. Had nothing to do with feudalism. Likewise a slaveholder. Likewise an ancient tribe, communist, communal tribe. They didn't function like this. This is what is new. And so Marx now says, let's follow the logic. If this is an equal exchange, if you have $100 worth of money, and you buy $100 worth of tools, equipment, raw materials, and $100, and including the workers you hire, and you put them to work, how is it you end up with something that'll get you more money? I mean, you put in $100, if this was, say, the 125 at the end. If you put in 100, how do you get out more? Assumedly, the means of production, the tools, equipment, and raw materials are used up. Basically, what you do is you transform them. From a hammer, it becomes the chair. That's the output. From the glue, it's still there, it just is in a different form. Labor is the transformation of these goods into that. That's what work is. You take a tree and you make a chair. You take wool and you make a shirt. The wool is still in the shirt, and the lumber is still in the chair. So the value of the stuff you use up is over here. It's still here. It's just changed its form. Well then, let's look here, Marx says. Could this, we hire workers, do we get from the workers when they work what we put into them when we hire them? And he says, wait a minute. And the big light bulb goes off. And the eureka moment has happened. Of course, Marx is playing with us. But he writes it that way, as if it's a moment of great discovery. He says, wait a minute, labor power, hire a worker. Maybe the name of the game in capitalism is to hire a worker, pay him, buy the labor power from the worker like a commodity. Like you would buy a chair from a chair maker, we buy from you your ability to work. Literally your capacity. That's the deal, right? When you go to work, you come at 8 o'clock in the morning and you stay till 5, and you do what I tell you. I don't want you to bring an object. Bring you. Bring your brains and your muscles, which I will direct you what to do with for those 8 hours. After that, you're on your own. So the capitalist buys the labor power of the worker. A deal is struck. You're the worker. You sell your capacity to work because you own it. I'm the capitalist. I buy it from you. I buy your capacity. You come at 9, you stay till 5, and I'm going to tell you what to do with the tools, equipment, and raw materials that I purchased for you to work with. And now Marx says, wait a minute. The value you give to the worker for his labor power, maybe it's systematically less than the value the worker adds by working. Oh, maybe in the contract, the deal between the capitalist who hires and the worker who sells his or her labor power, maybe in that contract there is a difference between what the worker is paid and the value added by the worker's labor. If that were the case, then we would have an answer to the mystery, says Marx. We would give the workers 50, let's say, out of the 100, $50 for tools, equipment, and raw materials, $50 to hire the workers. The $50 of tools, equipment, and raw materials show up in the final product. But what shows up in the final product as contributed by the workers is the labor they did, not what they were paid. So let's suppose that were the case, says Marx. Then the mystery is solved. Capitalism can take over industry if and only if the workers will work for less value than their labor adds to what the capitalist sells. That's what we talked about all last week. Capitalism is a system in which M can become M prime. The capitalist gets surplus value because what he pays to the worker in value is less than what the worker adds to the value of output by his labor. Remember the story of last week? I used as the example from your life. When you sit down with an employer and you dicker over your job that you're hoping to get, and you agree to come and work at this place, and he agrees after haggling with you to give you, I think I used $22 an hour, or some number like that last week. And I had you all pretty much agreeing, right, that the only way an employer is ever going to give you $22 an hour to come there and work is if an hour of your work will give him more stuff to sell at the end of the week than $22. If your labor produced an extra $22 worth of stuff for him to sell by having you there, and he had to take the extra $22 he got from what you produced and give it to you as your wage, there'd be nothing in it for him. And he wouldn't do it. And you all nodded. And this is Marx. That's right. The only way you're ever going to get hired is if you produce more in the output than it costs him to have you come and work there. And that difference, the difference between the value added by a worker's labor and what's paid to the worker, that's the prime. That's where surplus value comes from. Capitalists can be active in industry. Capitalism can take over industry if and only if the working class of people accept this role. The minute the worker said, we're not doing that, then on that day, take our hat off, capitalism is over. Finished. Can't function. The capitalist cannot get his capital to be fruitful. In fact, the very language, capital is fruitful, is awesome, which no Marxist would ever allow to let go. Capitalist is fruitful? What just happened here? The capitalist is ripping off the worker. He's taking from the worker more than he gives him. And Marx says therein lies the secret of capitalist industry. And look what he's done. He has taken us from a discussion of commodities and exchange nice and sweetly over to the question of labor, thanks to Smith and Ricardo, and from that into the whole area of production, and by examining this peculiar capital, money used as capital, asking how it spreads to industry, he has finally answered these questions, and in the process given us the most important contribution of his work, the theory of surplus value. That in production, M can become M prime. Money can act as capital and grow if and only if it's able to pay for a worker's labor less than the value added by that worker when he or she labors. And based on that insight, which we will begin with, I'll go over it again at the beginning of next week on Monday, we will then ask the next question that comes. Once we understand where the surplus arises, we're going to examine the workers who produce it, the capitalists who get it, and then how those capitalists who get it distribute it around the society and how that shapes the politics and the culture and everything else. We've run out of time. I will see you next week, 5:30.